In a building in Japan, a meeting of Japan's top guild was underway. The matter at hand was urgent. As they gathered, a few men noticed others approaching. It was Sugimoto Reiji, the vice guild master of the Blade Guild, accompanied by other S-rank hunters. However, one man interrupted, scoffing that Reiji wasn't the vice leader anymore. He was the leader. The atmosphere darkened as the conversation turned to the Jeju Island raid, where 7 S-rank hunters had perished, including Goto Ryuji. Whispers spread that their deaths were tied to Chairman Matsumoto's corrupt scheme. They had monopolized the hunters, and now the Blade Guild teetered on the brink of collapse. If things went well, though, they still had a shot at becoming Japan's top guild. But as they spoke, nearby Blade Guild hunters overheard and turned with expressions filled with terror. Seeing this, they chose a different path, trying to ignore them. One man grumbled bitterly. Those same people couldn't even look at them when Goto was alive. Now, with Goto gone, they were acting cocky. The fear was gone. One of the women in the group brought up a rumor. The Phantom Guild was planning to absorb the Snowy Mountain Guild. If that happened, they'd command 4 S-rank hunters, just like the Blade Guild. But another dismissed it, saying it was ridiculous. Even if every guild joined forces, it still wouldn't be enough to claim dominance. Later, in one of the meeting rooms, an angry guild leader shouted in frustration, "Why is the association silent? Why did an S-rank dungeon appear right in the middle of the city?" He questioned their lack of response and demanded everyone admit what would happen if monsters began spilling out of it. The president of the Japanese Hunter Association replied calmly, "Even if they gathered all the S-rank hunters, it wouldn't be enough to deal with this dungeon." He suggested summoning national-level hunters instead. Another man, with a scar on his face, criticized the prime minister for assembling guild leaders just to ask stupid questions. He warned that the consequences would rival the Jeju Island disaster. But a man across from him challenged his pessimism. Did he have any alternative plan? Why not hire Thomas Andre? The room murmured. The idea was nice, but they all knew they can't afford Thomas Andre. And with the explosion of new dungeons, most elite mercenaries were already booked. Would anyone step forward for a dungeon of this level? Then, the Blade Guild leader spoke up. There was someone who could help. Not for free, of course. He proposed hiring Yuri Orlov, a barrier specialist who could suppress even S-rank threats. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was behind the wheel of his car, deep in thought. He had just reached level 101. His abilities were growing exponentially, and he wondered, what would level 102 bring? Upon arriving at his destination, he recalled how Jinho had managed everything on his own. Jinwoo was proud of his friend's enthusiasm, though they still needed to recruit more participants. Just then, he noticed someone. Hunter Cha. She seemed startled and quickly turned to walk in the opposite direction. Jinwoo, amused and confused, approached her. "Why are you running away? And why were you coming toward our office?" Flustered, she waved her hands awkwardly.
Well, I left my car in the parking lot, so..."
He realized the truth. She couldn't retrieve her car because of the shadow exchange. Then she asked him,
"Could you spare some time?
Her thoughts were racing.
Should I ask about those pictures on social media? Does she really work for you now? If so, why was she hired and not me? Isn't an S rank better than an A rank? Is he dating that girl?"
But she shifted topics.
"Hunter Min Byung wanted me to deliver a message about your powers."
Jinwoo cut her off. "Let's talk inside." Once in the office, she looked around.
"No one's here?"
"Jinho's out on business," Jinwoo replied. Cha blushed at the realization. They were alone. He asked her what had happened and how she'd received the message. She explained.
"That day, I heard a voice. It had told me to say this.
Be cautious. The one who plucked him from the endless darkness. He is no longer himself. Though he retains his consciousness, he feels like a blind servant created solely for your sake. That gives him joy and frightens him." She had asked Min Byung what it meant, and he had warned her. This force was dangerous and powerful. Jinwoo needed to remember what his true army was. Later, during a dungeon raid, as Jinwoo's shadow soldiers swept through the dungeon, He sat with Jinho, eating a sandwich. He mulled over the cryptic message. Whether it was true or not, he knew he had to understand the essence of his power. That was more important than simply growing stronger. Jinho, mouth full, remarked how this reminded him of their C-rank dungeon days. He jokingly suggested Jinwoo let his shadows do household chores too, but Jinwoo explained that as the distance between him and his shadows grew, the experience he received decreased, and besides, he couldn't monitor them constantly. Jinho shifted topics, asking how Jinwoo's sister was doing. "She needs rest," Jinwoo answered. "I left my most trustworthy shadow to watch over her." He decided to check in using second-level sense transmission. Through his shadow's eyes, he saw his sister asleep on the couch, a movie playing on TV. Behind her, Baru was flipping through channels, clearly hunting for historical dramas he liked. Jinwoo smiled, realizing the reason Baru was speaking funny. He checked his mother and others. Then, suddenly, saw water dripping into a bathtub. Hunter Cha was in it. Horrified, he realized he'd looked in the wrong place. He quickly disconnected. Jinho, noticing his reaction, asked if he'd dozed off. "No," Jinwoo replied quickly, deciding he owed Cha an apology, maybe even a treat. Jinho brought up the S-rank dungeon that had appeared in Japan. Rumors said it would collapse in 3 days. Hunters were gathering. Had they contacted Jinwoo? "Yes," Jinwoo said, "but I have other matters to attend to. I'm still considering their offer." He thought of the Carton and Temple key. What kind of invitation had the system given him? What truth awaited him there? Rising from his seat, Jinwoo said, "If you've eaten, it's time to work." Jinho jumped up to follow him. At that moment, inside one of the buildings,
I am Yuri Orlov. As you already know, people call me the best support-type hunter in the world. After reading the files Blade Guild sent, I have to say, evacuating the civilians was the right call. And as for the chronic manpower shortage, is it true that Japan can only send 6 S-rank hunters on this mission?
the man sitting across from him confirmed it with a grim expression. That's right. With dungeons constantly appearing across the country, each major guild is stretched thin. Every one of them has to keep at least one high-level hunter close by. Even our guild has dispatched 3, except for one we had to keep. Yuri's expression turned disapproving.
This is a disaster. How do you expect to protect an entire nation like this? I'll do it. I'll block the gate for as long as necessary. But my price is $3.6 billion a year. That's $10 million per day.
The guild leader was shocked. $10 million a day? He asked. Yuri Orlov calmly replied,
That's right. For just $3.6 billion a year, you can save your entire country. Compared to Thomas, my services are a bargain.
The hunters standing behind the guild leader couldn't understand Yuri's language, but judging by his tone and expression, they could tell he wasn't saying anything pleasant. Orlov continued, boldly announcing,
Pay $10 million a day and save your nation. Or try to cut corners and lose everything. In your current situation, you don't have the luxury of choice. It wouldn't be enough even if you begged at my feet.
The guild leader sitting across from him commented on how confident he was. Yuri responded,
Such confidence was only natural. After all, I am far superior to the so-called losers standing behind you.
Though the 2 hunters behind bristled at the insult, not understanding his words, they could still feel the contempt behind them. They tensed instinctively, and then suddenly, they froze. Yuri raised his hand, stating coldly,
You won't be able to move without my permission. Try to come out if you can.
They struggled to move and couldn't even twitch a finger, even though they were S-rank hunters. It felt as though invisible chains were holding them in place. The sensation was terrifying, and they had no idea how he was doing it. Yuri calmly declared,
I'll block the S-rank gate and as a bonus I'll throw in these 2's lives. How about that? I think you should be satisfied now.
The guild leader, however, hesitated. We've analyzed your abilities thoroughly, he said, but I'm not sure the government will approve such a budget. In that moment, he questioned whether Yuri could really be trusted. Understood. Then let me make one call. I'll give you my final answer after that. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was getting ready to leave. As he packed his things, he told his mother he was heading out. She looked at him with concern and asked,
Son, I don't have to worry about you, do I?
Jinwoo reassured her, everything's fine. I just have to meet someone. With that, he said goodbye and left the apartment. He had little time before the gate would open. As soon as the stopwatch hit 0, the key in his hand began to glow, revealing the location where the gate could be unlocked. At that very moment, several hunters were already gathered near a recently opened gate, located at a school. 2 gates had opened in the same place, something unheard of. Luckily, the school was closed. Suddenly, she noticed a strange man approaching. She quickly stepped forward to stop him, saying it was forbidden to be there. But when he pulled back his hood, she recognized him. It was Hunter Jinwoo. He immediately asked her when the gate had appeared. She replied that it had opened 3 days ago. That's when a sinking realization hit Jinwoo. He had completely misunderstood something. No one had said the dungeon would open only after he discovered its location. Since 3 days had already passed, that meant someone had likely entered the dungeon. Judging by the circumstances, he guessed it wasn't a high-ranking dungeon. Still, he asked the girl if any hunters had gone inside. She confirmed that a team had entered about 2 hours ago. Jinwoo's expression grew urgent. Call them back. Stop the exploration immediately. The girl looked confused. According to the official scan, it was only a C-rank dungeon. Why the panic? But Jinwoo was insistent. Those hunters are in danger. If we don't act now, they'll all die. Still confused, the girl watched as Jinwoo walked straight toward the gate. Just stay here and wait, he told her firmly. She wanted to stop him, or at least understand what was happening. The hunters who had entered earlier stood before a massive stone door, recognizing it as the entrance to the boss room. But something was off. The door was shut tight. They began to debate what to do. Some suggested leaving while they still could. Just then, Jinwoo arrived. He warned them sharply, "Don't open that door. It's a trap." The hunters were startled by his sudden appearance. "Who are you?" one of them asked. "I'm Sung Jin-Woo," he replied. "And this is a double dungeon. I've been in one before. I'm one of the survivors." The realization hit them. He was the S-rank hunter they'd only heard about in stories. Jinwoo urged them to leave. "It's dangerous. I'll take care of it myself." He approached the massive door and tried to open it, but it was locked, enchanted. A system notice appeared before his eyes. The doors of the Temple of Kartanon are sealed. A key is required. Jinwoo reached into his inventory and pulled out the key. The other hunters watched in confusion. One of the hunters stepped forward awkwardly. "We're sorry, but this dungeon was assigned to us by the association. Even if you're an S rank, we can't just hand it over." Jinwoo didn't argue. "I'm not stopping you. If you want to go in, that's your choice." The group looked relieved. They thought they had been right to stand their ground. One of them boldly stepped toward the doors. Suddenly, a chilling notification flashed in the air. "Access denied. Unauthorized individual has entered the temple." As the hunter took a few more steps, the enormous stone guardian standing at the door moved. With a terrifying roar to strike. But before it could land the blow, Jinwoo appeared in a flash, grabbing the hunter by the armor and throwing him back to safety. The hunters froze in horror as the stone guardian towered before them. Jinwoo turned to them. "If you still want to go in, I won't stop you. But listen carefully. Leave now. Contact the association and report this. It's a double dungeon." Without another word, Jinwoo stepped into the boss room. Keyholder detected. The stone doors and slammed shut behind him. The air grew heavy. As he stood in the hall, torches along the walls began to light up one by one. Everything was just as he remembered. The statues, unmoving, eerie, familiar. This is where it all began, he thought. But now he saw it clearly. These statues weren't monsters. Those creatures were merely puppets. Only one of them had true magic. Jinwoo's eyes locked onto the statue holding the Tablet of Commandments. "So it was you," he muttered. "Won't you say anything?" Suddenly, the massive statue's lips curled into a twisted grin. And then, in a chilling voice that echoed through the temple, it spoke.
At last, you have arrived.
At that moment, Yuri Orlov arrived at an airport in Japan where a swarm of reporters had gathered, all focused solely on him. Cameras flashed, microphones extended in his direction as journalists shouted over one another, urging him to look their way and answer their questions. "Mr. Orlov, how do you plan to block the S-rank gate?" Calmly and confidently, Orlov addressed the media.
I will create a magic circle around the gate. Once I activate it, the barrier will seal the gate completely. Nothing will be able to come through.
Skepticism filled the air. An S-rank gate was no ordinary threat. Orlov continued,
Of course, my magic alone isn't enough to maintain a barrier of that scale, but I have a method. I can draw magical energy from objects around me.
He then explained his plan: to distribute mana crystals throughout Tokyo. Once the circle is activated, the barrier would absorb the mana from those crystals, reinforcing itself into a powerful city-scale seal.
I will save everyone. Remember that.
The live broadcast aired across various channels, including a large screen in the Korean Hunters Association office. The president of the association sat quietly, watching Orlov speak with unease. He couldn't help but wonder, can Orlov really contain the power of an S-rank gate? The thought of what might happen if he failed was terrifying. He turned to Woo Jinchul, who was standing beside him.
How's Hunter Jinwoo?
He's raiding dungeons in the Seoul area.
Jinchul replied, handing over a document.
These are the dungeons he requested permission to raid through the Ajin Guild.
The president scanned the list.
Won't this cause problems with the White Tiger Guild, the Hunters Guild, or even the Reapers?
It might.
Jinchul admitted.
A guild with only one member trying to compete with Korea's biggest names. It sounds like a joke.
His assistant, standing nearby, chuckled and nodded in agreement.
But why?
The president asked.
What's he trying to do?
The assistant shrugged.
We don't know. He only asked for exclusive access to the surrounding gates for 1 week. He said to make sure no one interferes during that time.
The president leaned back in his chair, considering the request.
As long as no one else steps in, there shouldn't be a problem.
Suddenly, the assistant's phone rang. He said,
Excuse me, sir, I need to take this.
The president replied, glancing at his watch.
Take it. I have an appointment soon.
The assistant stepped aside and answered. The voice on the other end was urgent. We have an emergency at one of the raid sites. You remember that school where the orcs appeared recently? There's been another incident.
Another gate?
The assistant asked. Not just a gate, a double dungeon. And apparently, Hunter Sung Jin-Woo has gone in there, alone. Deep inside the double dungeon, Hunter Sung Jin-Woo stood alone once again in the vast, echoing temple. Before him rose the towering, terrifying statue, the same one that had once loomed over him in the past, but this time it was different. With a low rumble, 6 massive stone wings unfurled from the statue's back, shaking the very air. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed as he watched the stone slab inscribed with the temple's rules crack and splinter, then completely shatter in the statue's grasp. It seems, Jinwoo said quietly, those rules never made sense to begin with. The enormous statue answered him at last, its voice like rolling thunder.
It's not so simple. The rules are no longer necessary.
Jinwoo stepped forward, eyes locked on the ancient being. So, you called me here?
Yes.
The winged statue replied without hesitation. Then let me ask, are you a monster? A smirk hidden beneath its stone hood.
You've asked the wrong question, Hunter. The question is not who I am, but what you are.
Then, with a resounding clap of its stone hands, the entire temple shifted. Every single statue in the room began to move.
You've reached the final test. If you can endure it, you will learn the truth. Everything about yourself. That will be your reward.
Jinwoo instantly raised his hand. Arise, he commanded. But nothing happened. The winged statue snapped its fingers with a faint crack.
This is an exam. All class skills are sealed. Your loyal shadows are of no use to me.
A cold system notification popped up before Jinwoo's eyes, telling him his class-specific skills, potions, storage functions, and status recovery is prohibited. Jinwoo stood still. His secret weapon, his most carefully guarded trump card, had been neutralized in an instant. No shadows, no healing, no store. This test was meant for him alone, but there was no time for hesitation. The statues advanced without mercy, stone weapons raised. Their footsteps thundered across the temple floor. Jinwoo exhaled slowly, his expression sharpening. So be it. He still had one advantage, the items in his inventory. If shadows weren't an option, then he would fight with everything else. Jinwoo rushed forward to face the trial. The clash of stone and steel rang out through the ancient temple. One of the enormous stone guards swung its massive sword at Jinwoo with terrifying force, but he didn't flinch. With a surge of raw strength, he blocked the attack and shattered the sword in a single resounding crack. A chunk of the broken blade flew into his hand, and without hesitation, Jinwoo hurled it like a spear. The stone shard buried itself in the guard's head. The statue staggered, seemingly stunned, but Jinwoo didn't give it a moment to recover. With explosive speed, he leapt into the air, turned his body, and drop-kicked the embedded shard, driving it deeper and smashing the statue's head into the ground. But the battle had just begun. Another guard lunged at him with a heavy swing of its weapon, but Jinwoo moved like a blur. He blocked the attack with his dual daggers, slicing the enemy's weapon in half with precise, brutal efficiency. He slipped past the crumbling guard, darting behind the second one. With deadly calm, he drove both blades into the back of its stone skull. Crack, crack, until the giant collapsed under its own weight. Stone archers, lined along the temple walls, drew back their bows and loosed a storm of massive arrows. Jinwoo moved before the first arrow landed. Twisting and spinning through the air, he repelled each one with his blades, sparks flying at every impact. Then, and with perfect timing, kicked it with all his force. The projectile streaked through the temple like a missile, slamming into the archer's head and tearing off a chunk of its face in an eruption of stone dust. He didn't stop moving. Jinwoo pressed forward, each step brutal, every motion efficient. He fought with the precision of a master assassin and the power of a berserker. His blades flashed through the air, tearing through the statues one after another. It was like he had waited his entire life for this moment. Above it all, the winged statue watched in stunned silence.
To come this far with a human body, you have grown well.
Jinwoo had changed. Every strike he blocked, every movement he countered. These statues, they were powerful, yes. But now, for the first time, he knew he could beat them. The winged statue floated higher, eyes fixed on the battlefield, speaking softly to itself.
He has grown far beyond expectations. However, it's still too early to end the test here.
Suddenly, the entire temple trembled. Jinwoo's senses sharpened. Something bigger, more dangerous, was waking up. From the center of the temple, the largest stone statue began to rise. Its massive form towered above the others, casting a long, dreadful shadow across the room. This was no ordinary opponent. The winged statue's voice echoed ominously through the temple. It declared,
Now, it's time to worship God.
Several hundred kilometers away, far from Jinwoo's brutal battle against the winged statue god, a very different kind of confrontation was unfolding. Inside the Korean Hunter Association, Chairman Go Gun-hee, the president of the association, sat face-to-face with the Japanese Hunter Association's chairman, their respective translators beside them. The Japanese chairman placed a document on the table, sliding it across. It stated that Japan would forfeit all rights to the mana crystals from Jeju Island, a massive concession. Chairman's eyes narrowed. He couldn't quite understand the motive behind such a generous offer until the Japanese chairman spoke. In return, we would like to hire Hunter Sung Jin-Woo. At that, a slight smile curved Chairman's lip. He calmly replied,
Unfortunately, that hunter does not belong to our association.
But the Japanese chairman knew the truth. The only way to reach Jinwoo was through them. He wasn't demanding anything. He only wanted to talk. Even so, the request felt heavy. Chairman sat in silent thought, realizing that Japan's desperation had a reason. With Goto Ryuji dead, they no longer had a single hunter powerful enough to hold back S-rank gates. If they wanted Jinwoo's services, they'd pay anything. It wasn't a bad deal, not when Jinwoo's strength could change the fate of a nation. But instead of replying, Chairman pushed the paper back across the table.
I'd like to speak to you alone, without the translators.
The Japanese chairman was surprised. You speak Japanese? Chairman nodded.
When I was a child, my father ran a business in Japan.
Once the translators stepped out and the door closed behind them, the mood shifted instantly. Chairman's eyes sharpened.
If you're up to something again, drop it. Right now.
The Japanese chairman was caught off guard. Chairman continued, his voice low and firm.
I have heard that the Blade Guild has cut ties with you. The Blades Guild took subsidies but only acted as a front. It's not hard to guess what was going on. They were always working hand in hand with your association. And now, with Goto Ryuji dead, those S-rank hunters are like wild dogs. The guild's collapsing. The other guilds are stretched thin, dealing with gate breakouts. And if something spills out of that gate in the middle of Tokyo, all of it will be on your head. You caused this. And now you can't control what you broke.
Then Chairman slowly placed something on the table, a small black box. The Japan chairman's face changed. It was a transceiver box from the gear used by Goto Ryuji's team. Chairman's voice dropped, cold and cutting.
Did you really think I wouldn't find out?
The atmosphere exploded with tension. Chairman was now furious. He slammed his hand on the table, shattering the box and splitting the wood beneath it.
You don't even care about the mana crystals. You're not thinking about the people. You only care about yourself.
He stared the Japan chairman down.
If this recording was ever made public, do you know what would happen? Asia cannot risk a continental crisis just because of one man's petty schemes. You should be grateful to Hunter Sung Jin-Woo. He's the only reason any of this is still intact.
Back inside the temple, Jinwoo was still surrounded, locked in relentless combat with wave after wave of stone guardians. Every time he shattered one of the towering statues, another would take its place, as if the dungeon itself refused to let him breathe. There was no end to them. Then suddenly, he felt a chill at his back. A massive shadow loomed over him. He turned. Standing behind him was a colossal statue, even larger than the rest. Its ominous, unmoving eyes glowed faintly. Jinwoo instantly knew he couldn't dodge in time. With no other choice, he activated one of his most powerful abilities, Ruler's Touch. The smaller statues chasing after him, mere moments from striking, suddenly began to levitate, helplessly suspended in the air by the sheer force of his will. At that moment, the massive statue's eyes flared to life, unleashing a devastating beam of energy. But the airborne statues became shields. The laser attack tore through them, disintegrating their stone forms in a blinding blast. That brief delay was all Jinwoo needed. He dodged, barely escaping the full force of the attack. Then, a system notification appeared before his eyes. Skill. Dominator's Touch has reached its maximum level. Skill has evolved into Ruler's Authority. One mistake, one hit from that colossal statue, and not even his strongest skills could save him. That laser attack wasn't something he could survive, so he made a decision. He had to take it down first. Activating Sprint, Jinwoo burst forward, propelling himself through the air at blinding speed toward the giant. But the statue wasn't idle. Sensing the incoming threat, it lifted its enormous foot and slammed it down with crushing force. The entire temple rumbled with the impact. Dust and smoke burst outward, and for a moment the statue almost looked satisfied. It began to smile, thinking it had finally crushed the defiant hunter. But then, movement. Bright light and energy flared from beneath its foot. Suddenly, Jinwoo shot up like a bullet, soaring higher and higher, having used ruler's authority at the last second to divert the crushing blow and rocket himself into the air. He ran up the giant's body, his speed unmatched, aiming for its head. Sensing danger, the statue's eyes began to glow again. Another laser attack. But Jinwoo had already combined sprint and ruler's authority, shifting into the statue's blind spot with perfect timing. The beams of light missed, carving through the air harmlessly. From this angle, Jinwoo launched his strike with the blade, aiming directly for the head. But to his surprise, the blade, sharp enough to cut through anything, barely scratched the surface. His eyes narrowed. That wasn't enough. He wouldn't try to cut it. He'd break it. Leaping from the statue's shoulder, Jinwoo soared through the air toward its face. He saw it then, a narrow crack, a weak spot. Focusing all his strength, he pushed forward with ruler's authority. The air trembled as his power crashed into the statue's face. From the shadows above, the winged statue watched.
So you have countered my creation in such a way. Ha ha ha.
With a deafening crack, the statue's head jerked sideways, and the massive body toppled. The giant crashed to the ground, its fall echoing through the chamber like thunder. The room shook with the sound of victory. With the giant fallen behind him, Jinwoo landed on the ground, his boots cracking the marble beneath. But there was no time to rest. The other guard statues surged forward, their stone bodies creaking and groaning as they prepared to overwhelm him. But Jinwoo was done playing defense. He raised his hand, his eyes sharp and focused. Ruler's authority flared to life. With a crushing force, the statues around him were slammed into the ground, as if gravity itself had turned against them. One by one, they crumbled, unable to resist his will. Jinwoo looked at his clenched fist. The strength he held now was on an entirely different level. He had become something else. From above, slow applause echoed through the chamber. The winged statue, who had watched in silence until now, finally spoke. His voice calm, yet laced with admiration.
Incredible.
Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. It was time. As promised, he demanded the truth. But the winged statue's response chilled him.
The exam is not yet over.
The words hit hard. Jinwoo had forgotten. This was still a test, a new notification flashing before him. The final emergency quest.
I'm the last test.
His heart froze as he read it. A countdown had begun, and his life was on the line. Looking up at the winged statue, Jinwoo asked, "Who are you?" Really, voice almost mocking.
You already know. That's a stupid question.
But then, something changed. A crack formed across his mask. Dust fell. The statue's facade began to crumble, and from behind it, a voice echoed in a deeper, truer tone.
Very well. I am the architect of the system. Are you satisfied with my answer? Ha 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 ha.
Outside the gate, the situation was becoming increasingly tense. The hunters from the association had finally arrived, guided quickly by the girl who had been anxiously waiting. At their head was the inspector, who bore the heavy weight of responsibility on his shoulders. They had managed to gather the 7 strongest hunters available on such short notice, but even that might not be enough.
This isn't just any gate. This feels like something far worse.
The inspector's expression darkened.
It feels like the Grim Reaper's blade is pressed to my throat.
He immediately turned to the others.
Can you feel this? This isn't normal. This is monstrous.
The inspector's thoughts raced. He asked urgently if any S-rank hunters were nearby. The Hunters Guild is conducting a raid today, someone answered. 2 S-rank hunters are on site.
Then send a message now. Tell them to come immediately,
he ordered, voice sharp with urgency. They still didn't understand what Jinwoo was doing in there. But deep down, the inspector feared the answer. Because at that very moment, inside the gate, Jinwoo was facing the strongest monster he had ever encountered. In the heart of the stone chamber, the architect revealed his true form. With a terrifying shift, his wings twisted and transformed into 6 monstrous arms. In a blur of speed, he appeared beside Jinwoo and struck him with a crushing blow, launching him like a ragdoll across the chamber. Bam! Jinwoo smashed into the wall, cracks webbing through the stone as blood splattered. But there was no time to recover. The architect came again, fists blazing, each one carrying lethal force. Yet Jinwoo was ready now. His instincts, honed through countless battles, finally caught up with the architect's speed. With precision and power, he began to block and parry, the impact of their strikes echoing like thunder in the chamber. The architect's expression twisted in surprise.
Impressive. You are exceeding my expectations. Ha ha ha.
He landed a heavy strike to Jinwoo's face, sending a spray of blood flying. But Jinwoo didn't falter. Fueled by raw determination, Jinwoo retaliated, punching the architect with everything he had. The architect flew across the chamber, skidding to a stop, clearly stunned. He slowly straightened, still smiling, he said,
Unbelievable. I never thought I'd be this excited to fight a human. Not once in my existence did I ever think a human could be a worthy opponent.
Jinwoo's mind was racing. There was so much he didn't understand. Why had he been chosen? Why was this system created? What was the architect truly after? He thought back to how it all started, how the architect called him here when he reached level 101. It felt like it had all been orchestrated from the very beginning. Was this all a trap? Was I just a pawn? But there was no time to dwell on it. The architect, eyes blazing, charged straight at him, a blur of fury and energy.
If you want answers so badly, then come take them.
Jinwoo's instincts screamed. He couldn't fight him at this range. He darted to the side, using ruler's authority to propel himself away and gain distance. But the architect saw it coming. In the very same instant, he activated his own ruler's authority, and their powers clashed, sending out a massive shockwave that shook the entire chamber. Dust and debris filled the air. Jinwoo landed, eyes wide. He can use the same abilities, the same skills as me. There was no room for tricks now, not against someone who shared his own power. As the smoke cleared, the architect's voice echoed through the chamber, calm but heavy with finality.
It doesn't matter if you kill me. The outcome has already been determined. The moment I created the system, everything was set.
But Jinwoo wasn't done. He demanded answers. Why me? Why did you choose me as the player? What even is this world we're in? The architect's grin faltered, just a bit.
I didn't choose you. I don't like you at all. In fact, I was against the idea. I'm just the architect, the one who built and maintained the system. I designed it. But I'm not the one who picked you. I'm just the moderator, meant to develop the player. That's all.
Jinwoo glanced at the timer. Minutes left, maybe less. The air suddenly shifted. The architect rose into the air, wings flaring, and his expression turned stone cold.
There's no more time, Sung Jin-Woo. I'll fight you with everything I have, until your final second ticks away.
The architect lunged, wielding weapons he had picked up from the battlefield. Each blow was monstrous, crashing down like thunder. But something had changed in Jinwoo. He could feel them. Swords, spear, blade, axe, hammer. Every motion, every swing. He could sense them before they came. His reflexes sharpened, his perception heightened. It wasn't just instinct now, it was clarity. The architect's flurry of attacks grew faster.
How is he able to block my blows and attack in response?
With perfect timing, he dodged each strike, weaving through them with inhuman precision. Then, slash! Jinwoo's blade sliced through the architect's stone arm. The architect staggered back, eyes wide in disbelief. Even though it was a fake body, he felt the pain. It hurt, and for the first time, he understood.
So, this is why he was chosen.
He screamed in frustration, furious.
You're only human. This is insolence.
But Jinwoo didn't stop. The timer continued ticking. 3 minutes and 45 seconds left. Suddenly, the statues around them began to rise, groaning to life once more. Jinwoo gritted his teeth. He couldn't stop now. Not when he was so close. A giant statue towered before him, surrounded by smaller ones. At the center of them all was the architect. Jinwoo leapt into the air and activated ruler's authority. With a shattering crash, he slammed into the ground, sending the statues flying in every direction. He charged straight for the architect, blade in hand. Strike by strike, he began to carve away the architect's defenses, slicing off stone arms, weakening him, closing in with each blow. But suddenly, crack! A crushing impact slammed into Jinwoo's shoulder. He turned. There it was, the great stone guardian, the same one that once almost killed him. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. Not this time. With a single leap, he vaulted into the air and came down with all his strength. The guardian's head split apart, crumbling to pieces. No hesitation. Jinwoo turned back to the architect and kept attacking. Stone limbs were severed, one by one, until finally he pinned the architect to the ground. Breathing heavily, the architect looked up, broken and defeated.
The test is over. I've lost.
Jinwoo stood tall above him. The timer read, 2 minutes remained. The architect, pinned beneath Jinwoo's blade, finally began to speak. Not in rage, but with eerie calm.
All the answers you seek, they're already inside you.
Just then, a notification appeared before Jinwoo. Jinwoo furrowed his brow. What did he mean by that? But the architect continued,
The choice now is yours alone.
He paused, heart pounding. Everything he had wanted to know, every truth, every mystery, was now within reach. I accept. The moment those words left his lips, a brilliant light enveloped him. His consciousness was suddenly unbound, floating, weightless. He found himself drifting in a strange place, like a spirit suspended in the sky. Below him stretched a vast, desolate battlefield, and from every direction came the slow, thunderous march of monsters. Jinwoo's breath caught in his throat. There were so many. As they marched, their heads suddenly turned upward, gazing toward the sky. They're looking at me. But when Jinwoo followed their gaze, he saw it. A massive gate, suspended in the sky, yawning open across multiple points in the world. This isn't Earth. And yet, it felt connected, as if what he was seeing was a vision of what could be. If this monstrous army, ice elves, high orcs, giants, and more, were ever to cross into Earth, humanity wouldn't survive. But then, high above, there stood their true enemy, an army of gleaming, merciless silver warriors, descending from on high like celestial executioners. And it was here, in this alien sky, that the true war began. The monsters, sensing a common enemy, with a terrifying roar, the armies of chaos charged, their weapons clashing against the silver host, metal against metal. The air was filled not with spells, but with screams of fury, pain, and rage. The ground turned scarlet as the battle escalated into unrelenting carnage. The silver warriors were impossibly strong, cutting down monsters with precise and unfeeling force. Jinwoo watched in disbelief as the tide turned. It looked like the monsters might not make it. Just when it seemed the monsters would be completely overrun, a shift rippled across the battlefield. The silver soldiers, who moments ago charged forward with unshakable resolve, suddenly began to retreat. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. Something had changed. No, someone had arrived. From the shadows of the war-torn plain, a figure clad in pitch-black armor emerged, gave a command,
Arise.
And the dead obeyed. The corpses of fallen monsters, scattered across the ground like forgotten remnants, began to stir. Jinwoo's heart thudded. This is the monarch's domain. From nothingness, shadow soldiers erupted. Thousands of them formed from the corpses of the fallen. Where once there had been defeat and death, now stood an immortal army. Jinwoo stared, stunned, as realization dawned. He's a shadow monarch, riding atop a majestic dark horse, surrounded by writhing darkness, commanding his forces with effortless control. And the monsters, now unafraid of death, charged once more into the fray. The air grew heavy, choked with smoke and shadows. Even the monsters that had fallen just moments ago rose again, reforged in shadow, their eyes glowing with cold fire. Jinwoo watched as darkness swallowed light. Wherever the Shadow Monarch strode, destruction followed. The Silver Warriors fell under his sword. He raised his hand, and with ruler's authority, he crushed the airborne enemy in air. An unstoppable cycle of death and rebirth, a terrifying force that turned every enemy into an ally. The Shadow Soldiers repeated the cycle of death and revival to wipe out their enemies. Wherever the monarch went, the trail of destruction was left in his wake. Victory seemed imminent for the shadows and the monsters. That is, until they showed up. While Jinwoo was submerged in that surreal vision of war, hunters from the Hunter Guild and Hunter from the Association stood nervously in front of the ominous stone doors.
What is this magic?
Turning to the inspector, he asked, "Are you sure Jinwoo is behind these gates?" The inspector nodded.
It's confirmed. He went in alone.
Nearby, Cha Hai Inn stood silently, eyes fixed on the sealed doors.
That's not Jinwoo's mana.
She clenched her fists.
No matter what, I have to help him.
Even the inspector wondered aloud. Why would he come back here, knowing what happened the first time? There had to be a reason, something only he understood. Then, the doors began to open. The hunters braced themselves, weapons at the ready. But what they saw inside made their blood run cold. The statues, the colossal throne, the terrifying aura that weighed on their very souls. It's real, the inspectors whispered. It all really existed. Before they could react further, a voice cut through the air like a blade.
How are you here? I don't remember summoning more humans.
The hunters were stunned, not just by his monstrous appearance, but by the fact that he could speak.
Quiet! If you make too much noise, you'll wake the king.
Eyes wide, the hunters looked deeper into the room, and that's when they saw him. Jinwoo, standing perfectly still, his body glowing with an otherworldly light, unmoving as if caught between worlds. They couldn't understand what was happening to him, but before they could act, hunters collapsed, their bodies torn apart in an instant. The architect had moved. His power was swift, precise, ruthless.
I have no use for weaklings, only the strong. Yes, you strong humans will make excellent first offerings for the king.
Jinwoo remained deep in his trance, watching a battle unlike anything he had ever seen. From one side marched a vast, burning legion, the demon army, led by the terrifying figure known as the Monarch of White Flames, and from the Red Gate, another army emerged, a monstrous horde of humanoid beasts, snarling and clawing at the earth beneath them. Towering above them all was a majestic and fearsome creature, a massive wolf, its fur glowing white like moonlight, a terrifying presence cloaked in killing intent, the Beast Monarch. Side by side, the Monarch of White Flames and the Beast Monarch advanced toward a single target, the Shadow Monarch. A cataclysmic clash was inevitable. Meanwhile, back inside the double dungeon, the hunters were struggling for survival. The hunters battled desperately against the statue guardians. Some were already severely wounded, others screaming for healing. Hunter Choi Jong-in, the nation's most powerful mage, shouted above the chaos. The architect, watching the carnage unfold, declared,
Anyone who would be alive by the time my puppets collapse would be granted the greatest honor to witness the birth of the king. If any one of you survive, that is.
As his words echoed, the god statue began to move. Its eyes started glowing with blinding intensity. Choi Jong-in shouted, "Everyone, watch out!" A beam of pure destruction erupted from the god statue's eye. The floor shook as explosions rang out, and anything caught in the path was vaporized instantly, but the hunters fought back. Dodging the lethal beam, Choi Jong-in retaliated, launching an intense barrage of flames at the statue. His voice rang out again. "Split into groups, take down the smaller guardians." At that moment, Woo Jin-Chul soared through the air and landed a powerful blow to a nearby guardian's helmet. The impact was thunderous, but the statue didn't flinch. He thought he was going to kill the guard, but suddenly realized that he hadn't even injured him, as the guard was stronger than he thought. The hunters realized that these guards have unusual defenses, and everyone should be on guard after all. Not even magic works on them, and even the taunt skills have no effect on them. They didn't even move even an inch after the numerous attacks made by the hunters. Hunter Choi Jong-in began to wonder if there was any way to defeat these creatures. Suddenly, he noticed Jinwoo standing off to the side and decided he had to wake him up, suspecting he might be hypnotized. The hunter launched one of his fireballs at Jinwoo, not caring whether it hit him or not. The most important thing was to wake him up, as this was their last chance to survive. However, as the fire orb drew closer to Jinwoo, the architect intercepted it with incredible speed, blocking the magic. He immediately flew toward Hunter Choi Jong-in, shouting,
"How dare you disturb the king in his slumber!"
But before the architect could strike, Choi Jong-in was saved by his companions. The three of them began attacking the architect together. At that moment, Hunter Woo Jin-chul shouted to Hunter Cha, urging her to wake Jinwoo up as soon as possible while they kept the architect distracted. Realizing this, she started running to the side, trying to reach the sleeping Jinwoo as quickly as possible. Just as she was about to reach him, we are shown Jinwoo's perspective. He was still watching the battle between countless monsters and the shadow soldiers. It was an incredible sight for him. So many had already fallen, yet they kept regenerating. If it were him, he would have exhausted all his mana long ago, but there seemed to be no end to the Shadow Monarch's power. The monsters and demons were now fighting against one common enemy, the Shadow Soldiers. After all, if this battle were only between the monsters and the Silver Warriors, the latter wouldn't have had to fight the Shadow Army. But since the Shadow Warriors were clashing with the monsters, it was clear there was an internal conflict among them. Once the battle ended, corpses littered the battlefield. The Shadow Monarch approached the defeated Monarch of White Flames, who now lay powerless on the ground. The Shadow Monarch asked,
"We had a chance to end this war today. So why did you betray me?"
The Monarch of White Flames replied,
"It's a great pity. I wanted so badly to kill you."
The Shadow Monarch repeated his question, asking again why he had done it. But the monster only laughed furiously and began speaking in an incomprehensible language. Without hesitation, the Shadow Monarch lifted him into the air, grabbed him by the neck, and finished him off. Suddenly, Jinwoo saw the eyes of the Monarch of White Flames, and he recognized them. When the helmet was removed, he realized it was the Demon King Baran. Jinwoo was stunned, wondering what Baran was doing here. Then, Jinwoo looked down at his hands, now stained with the monster's blood. He hadn't noticed it before, but something felt off. He suddenly felt something inside his body. When he touched his chest, he realized he now had two hearts, one human and the other a dark heart, pulsing with immense power. At that moment, he sensed an enemy approaching. As he turned his head, he saw silver knights flying through the sky in front of him. Just then, a system notification appeared. The playback of the retrieved data has ended. The architect, who was standing in front of the huntress, sneered and said,
"You are a very interesting person. Surprise me a little more."
The huntress decided to attack. She activated her sword dance and began striking at the architect. He laughed and engaged her, but the battle didn't last long. Suddenly, he wounded her shoulder and said mockingly,
"Ha ha. Is that all you've got? It's all going according to my designs. How boring. You humans. The system I built can predict and respond to every possible outcome. You won't be able to break through my creations with such feeble attempts. I guess you can't do any better."
Suddenly, an attack struck the architect. Hunter Choi Jong-in shouted to the others that they needed to wake up Hunter Jinwoo immediately. This was their only chance. While the architect was distracted, Hunter Cha began running with all her might toward Jinwoo. But the architect noticed her and moved to attack, reaching for her with a chilling smile. She quickly dodged and landed to the side. Impressed, the architect remarked,
"You dodged it. Impressive."
Then he noticed something, a shadow near the huntress. He muttered to himself,
A shadow. It can't come out because of the dungeon's rules, but that presence is unmistakable. To think the king implanted a shadow in you. What is your relationship with Sung Jin-Woo?
She replied,
A friend. I'm his friend, who came here to save him.
The architect realized they had come of their own free will and decided to give them one final chance.
Today, here in this world, one of the greatest events shall descend. I will give you the opportunity to witness this glorious moment. However, every single one of your little friends shall die here today.
But suddenly, the architect heard Jinwoo's voice asking, "Who decided that?" As soon as the architect turned his head, Jinwoo punched him in the face with all his might, sending him flying to the side. Jinwoo demanded, "Say it! What did you do to me?" The other hunters, seeing that Jinwoo had finally awakened, looked on in shock and sighed in relief. Jinwoo stood over the beaten and fallen architect.
You are not the king. Why are you here instead of him? How are you able to regain consciousness with the Black Heart?
Hearing his words, Jinwoo thought about the mention of the Black Heart and realized the immense flow of magic within him. It was because of that heart. A notification appeared. Title: Demon Hunter. Now that he has recovered the lost memories of killing the Demon King Baran, he is recognized as the master of great power. Black Heart Effect grants an additional 100,000 mana. Jinwoo noticed the architect's reaction and understood two things. First, the Black Heart was clearly not part of the architect's plan, and second, it was never meant to be used for Jinwoo's benefit. However, the memories he had seen didn't give him all the answers he sought. Jinwoo began questioning the architect. Why had he opposed his candidacy as the player? What was the role of the player, and what did the architect intend to do with him? But the architect, realizing something, grew more enraged and started yelling,
Shadow Monarch, how dare you! Do you think the other monks will just let this happen?
But Jinwoo began to act more seriously, summoning his large blades and pointing them toward the architect. He demanded that the architect answer his question. The architect replied,
You sure are an unpredictable one. I think I now understand why you were chosen.
At that moment, the hunters noticed that the statues, which had been standing still and watching, suddenly began to move. The architect warned,
If you kill me now, no one will be able to stop my puppets. Do you still think you can kill me?
But with cold eyes, Jinwoo replied, What if I kill you, and then your puppets? Fearfully, the architect tried to warn him,
If you kill me, the architect of the system.
But Jinwoo cut him off mid-sentence, a slight smile forming on his face. I'll be returned to being an E rank again, he said mockingly. With a confident grin, he continued, I thought about that too. But the existing system won't collapse just because the architect disappears now, will it? Hearing this, the architect hastily attempted to log into the system, but a notification appeared. System administrator login blocked. Confused and panicked, the architect couldn't understand why the system was reacting this way. In front of him, Hunter Jinwoo declared, I thought about this long ago, so I devoured the system whole. Looking at the architect with a mocking gaze, he added, I guess your design wasn't so perfect after all. The architect began to curse him, but before he could finish, Jinwoo's blade slashed him into dust. As the architect crumbled, he spoke.
A prediction, no, a prophecy. When the pillars of fire that hold the heavens are raised, an inevitable death will approach you.
But Jinwoo turned around and with full confidence said, As you please. He was ready, no matter what came his way. Outside the gate, all the hunters who had been guarding the entrance realized that it had already been an hour since the members of the Hunter Guild had entered the dungeon. They were growing increasingly curious about what was going on inside. After all, if they entered too, they might also be in danger. Suddenly, they noticed someone returning from the dungeon, and what they saw horrified them. The best members and strongest guilds in the country were emerging in a terrible state. No one could understand what could have happened in there. Inspector Woo Jin-Chul from the association asked the others,
Could you help us carry out the bodies of the fallen hunters?
Jinwoo, who was the last to come out, was deep in thought. The system architect was now gone, yet he still hadn't received the answers to his questions. As he started to walk away, Woo Jin-Chul said to him,
Almost 20 elite hunters have died. If this had been a dungeon break, the extent of the damage would have been unimaginable.
Looking at the sacrificed hunters, Jinwoo said that he had only survived thanks to the Hunter Guild and the association's monitoring efforts. But the inspector responded,
I knew Jinwoo had entered the double dungeon, and after sensing the enormous magic energy coming from inside, I asked the Hunter Guild for help, yet it still resulted in such a tragedy.
Then the inspector asked Jinwoo,
How did you know a double dungeon had opened in this particular gate?
Jinwoo replied, The dungeon summoned me.
The dungeon summoned you?
Woo Jin-chul asked, surprised. Yes, Jinwoo confirmed. I received a message telling me to come here. The inspector wanted to see the message with his own eyes, but Jinwoo told him that the message had been in his head, only he could see it. Woo Jin-chul wasn't sure whether Jinwoo was joking, especially given how many people had died. Suddenly, Hunter Cha Hai-in walked up and asked Jinwoo if he was okay. He replied that he seemed fine, but as he leaned to one side and began to say that he might be a little tired, he suddenly collapsed to the ground. Everyone nearby immediately rushed to his side. At this time in Japan, a convoy of trucks was transporting magic crystals to a large portal that had recently opened. Yuri Orlov, a national-level hunter, stood nearby, observing the operation.
About 200,000 tons of magic crystals have arrived, This should be enough to fuel the magic circle. First, I'll cast a barrier magic circle around the gate and fill it with the required magic power using these crystals. After that, the magic circle will begin to gather power on its own. But something strange.
Yuri Orlov paused, sensing something unusual, not with the barrier, but as if someone was watching them. Suddenly, he turned around and shouted,
Show yourself.
The man standing next to him looked confused and asked if Yuri really thought someone was still around, especially with the gate set to open tomorrow. But Yuri replied coldly,
Who said it was a person?
The other man couldn't understand what he meant. At that moment, the presence Yuri had sensed stood atop a building, watching them. The man muttered,
He's got pretty good senses. Well, considering where his strength is coming from, it's no surprise. Besides, it's finally beginning. Everything is unfolding according to the predetermined tragedy.
Nearby, other hunters stationed around the portal were puzzled about why the government had deployed soldiers, given that modern weapons were practically useless against monsters. One of them voiced this concern, but another hunter replied, If Yuri Orlov fails, the soldiers will at least buy us some time to prepare. The woman scoffed, saying the soldiers were just cannon fodder. To which another hunter responded grimly, So are we. That just proves how helpless humans are in the face of true disaster. Yuri Orlov watched as he approached the entrance of the portal, feeling confident. It was fortunate for him that there were so many magic crystals around. If everything went according to plan, he would be able to clear this gate on his own. He remarked to a nearby man,
It would be amazing to be dubbed the person who cleared an S-rank gate single-handedly, but unfortunately there is a hunter more suited for that title, so I shouldn't hope much.
The man watched as Yuri pulled a flask of alcohol from his pocket and took a swig. When questioned, Yuri replied that,
It's a toast to calm my nerves. I will show you the best show you have ever seen.
Before drinking, he casually asked,
How many S-rank hunters are in standby?
The man answered, 15. Yuri scoffed.
That's a small crowd for me. Where are the Americans?
Then asked,
Didn't they send any hunters to help?
The man explained that another gate had opened elsewhere in the world, not just in Japan, but also in India, and indeed all over the globe. Yuri realized they were likely short on manpower. Just then, the gate began to open. At that exact moment, Jinwoo, lying unconscious in a hospital bed, suddenly opened his eyes. Jinho entered the room and upon seeing Jinwoo awake, burst into tears. He ran to his side, sobbing, and asked why he was only waking up now. Everyone had thought he was dead. He'd been asleep for 3 whole days. Jinwoo, still groggy, reflected on the fact that he had slept for 3 days. It made sense. He had been completely exhausted, and it had been ages since he had proper rest. But more importantly, he couldn't forget what he had seen back then. Realizing the urgency, he suddenly asked Jinho what had happened while he was unconscious. Jinho, confused, didn't quite understand what he meant. Jinwoo clarified that he was talking about the S-rank dungeon that appeared in Japan. At that, Jinho turned serious and began explaining. As soon as the gate opened, huge giants began to emerge. No hunter could believe their eyes. These monsters were stronger than any top-tier A-rank bosses. But for Yuri Orlov, it was nothing. He activated his skills, and all the surrounding magic crystals began to glow, releasing energy. A powerful barrier formed around the gate. One of the giants attacked the barrier with a massive axe, but Yuri laughed and mocked it.
Aha! A monster that would be found in a mere A-rank gate. You think you can break my barrier?
But then, something terrifying happened. A massive hand emerged from within the gate, followed by an even larger giant. This colossal creature casually pushed aside the smaller giant and with one swing shattered the barrier completely, clearing a path for the giant monsters to invade.